I'm reminded how hard it is to commit to growth in the face of turbulence, uncertainty. But we need to maintain this growth mindset. In spite of that, growth creates value. We have to keep at it. The fog makes it challenging, but leaders need to make sure that we continue to find ways to make growth investments, to take growth risks. Welcome. I'm Tom Doorley of Sage Partners. I'll be your host today. Today, we're going to dive deep into one of the 4 principles that we've described to be your playbook for navigating the fog of change. With me is my Sage partner, Larry Bennigson. Larry brings a valuable and varied career to us at Sage Partners and to this conversation. Larry was an undergraduate engineer at UCLA, a naval officer, a PhD in industrial organization from Stanford, many positions in business and in consulting, and the head of the main office of a wonderful consulting firm that I know because we competed with him back in my Braxton days, the Mac Group. And he came to us most recently from the Harvard Business School, where he was on the faculty and focused on custom education. Larry, welcome.
Thank you, Tom.
So today we're going to talk about the Leaders Change Agenda. And it's a way we're going to sort out how it is you manage to go forward in the face of the dramatic change, the turbulence that we're all seeing. It turns out that back in the days when Larry and I and other Sage partners joined this profession, it was in many ways a simpler time. Things were more stable. So therefore, we could create for our clients what we called at one time long-term strategies or 5-year strategies. They were supposed to last 5 years. Maybe tinker a little bit, maybe making a minor adjustment or that sort of thing. But the idea was they were reasonably set in stone. We would then, 4 or 5 years later, come back and do it again. But today, we can't do that. Today, the era of what we might have called at the time one and done are old school, old issues, old ways of going about it. We need to find a way to be adjustable, a way to set a plan, but then modify it, make minor changes, or make major pivots. That's the idea. How it is we build these organizations that can be creative, can be focused, can be growing, but can be adjustable at the same time. So the first topic we're going to build off of is the Leaders Change Agenda. Larry, talk about what this thing is that we call the Leaders Change Agenda.
Right, Tom, and thank you. The Leaders Change is a playbook of how we find what we find the requirements are for accomplishing change in an enterprise, or frankly, in any organization. It's based on our combined decades of work with businesses in a wide range of industries in the US, in Europe, and in Asia. There are 6 parts to this change agenda. I'm going to briefly introduce them. Then I'll tell a story of a company implementing a new strategy, and I'll relate the actions they took and didn't take to the Leaders Change Agenda. Before I do that, I want to note there are many ways that business strategies get made. And these range from the private inspirations of a CEO, sometimes formal analysis done by people in the organization, that sometimes with consultants, sometimes without them. Whatever those processes might be, once a decision is made, how is it implemented? That's where the change agenda playbook comes in. So the 6 steps are: first on the Leaders Change Agenda is the leader, CEO. It could be a corporate business, it could be a business unit, it could be a team within the organization. The leader introduces, owns, and explains the change: the what, the why, the when, and the how, and of course follows up. By the way, I've had leaders tell me the hardest part of their job is having to say the same thing so often and so many different ways. It's just boring. The second item on the Leaders Change Agenda is the members of the leadership team, often the C-suite, are fully on board. They share ownership with the leader and support implementation. Third, the organization aligns process, culture, people, and structure with the new direction. Fourth, implementation is cascaded through the organization, engaging them in adjusting to the future and adding to it. Fifth is follow through, measuring, maybe more adjustment. And sixth is celebrating success.
One of the things I like to add at this point is that what Larry's describing as the leader's change agenda is version 1. Because we don't know what we're going to find as we continue to interact with our changing world, version 1 has become version 2. So we need to make sure our organization is prepared for the fact that this is not a one and done 5-year plan. This is a first step. It's a way of giving us focus as we move forward. And for sure, we're going to have to make those adjustments based on what we find when we interact with our customers. We see new technology, or we find some competitive action that we hadn't anticipated. So I think that's terrific, Larry. We've got ourselves the basic framework. We've got the steps. Tell us now how you've used this in a live example.
Well do, Tom. And I want to do that by looking at the real experience of a real company. Let's call the company Yum Inc. YUM. Yum is a leading U.S. consumer packaged food business. Soups, salad dressing, cheeses, wide range of products. It's a decentralized global company. It's been through a multi-year period of consolidation and a successful one. A recent strategy review revealed that Yum was being overtaken by competitors. CEO is now calling for new business development and growth. The problem was, after 2 years, there was little new growth. So how can we understand, and how could that CEO understand what was going on? One thing was the Yum CEO, who was calling for new business development, had been the CFO, who played a leading role during the very successful multi-year consolidation. In fact, that area was so successful that CFO was promoted to CEO. One thing that was going on was, while the new Yum leader had articulated to the organization the what, the why, the how, and the when, that's the first item on the lead agenda. That's not what the organization heard. The new CEO messenger lacked perceived credibility. So going back to change agenda item number 1, getting the message out and the organization hearing and making sense of the message are not the same thing. Another factor was that the Yum C-suite included 4 really powerful regional senior vice presidents. They were strong leaders. They ruled their worlds in a demanding way. They were all rewarded and not unhappy with the status quo. Further, Yum still had what I will call a consolidation business culture. Oh, what do I mean by culture? I mean the ingrained values and ideas about desired business behavior and decisions. Those behaviors and decisions that people take for granted what the emphasis and the orientation is. It's inherent in the culture. For example, increase margins, stay focused, minimize non-essential operating expenses. Those cultural factors, which were baked into the organization earlier, were still around. In addition, they continued to use the same planning, evaluation, and reward processes that were aligned with those values. So, in summary, Yum struck out on each of the first 3 change agenda items. Consequently, even though individual product market business managers had new ideas for growth, including innovative cross-business and territory cooperation, like, for example, a new soup in Thailand could be modified for the South Los Angeles market. These ideas were developed, but they remained hidden. Tom, I still recall the product market business leader who I was talking with. He went to a lower desk drawer in his office, and he pulled out and he showed me a folder, which was an opportunity plan that he had ready to go. And I said, great. I said, why aren't you doing this? To my surprise, he said, they don't want it. He was afraid no one would support his new idea. I also recall the day I met one-on-one with the CEO in his New York office to summarize findings. I said, Dave, I've got good news and bad news. He said, tell me the good news first. Okay. You have people throughout the company who have new ideas for growth. Great. What's the bad news? They don't think you want that. Silence. We looked at each other. Then I explained, and I used the leader's change agenda as a kind of framework for orienting my feedback. Dave and his colleagues then gave a lot of attention to the other items on the change agenda, engaging the organization in workshops that reinforced Yum's growth goals, identified blockages, and surfaced those growth ideas that were still in the bottom drawers. And they recognized, rewarded, and celebrated successes. Dave and Yum eventually restarted those growth engines. Tom, that's a story that I tell here because I've never forgotten it.
And it's a good story, Larry. It's a good story. It makes the case that just because the CEO or whatever thinks something is in place, it doesn't mean the rest of the organization believes it. So I'm going to give you a quick example of one that might, at the first, seem easier to find a change, because it's two roughly similar sized organizations who felt they were subscale. They probably were. I think they were in their industry. They needed to combine in order to get up the league tables as it was occurred, and they did so. And they right away, once they combined, became number 3, close number 2 in the industry, and they were ready to go. So you think, well, that's great. They solved the problem. Well, no, they didn't. Because when you put two companies together, what is the first reaction? Well, is my company going to be the alpha dog, or is that going to be the alpha dog? Which is it going to be, A or B? Well, the answer is neither. So the CEO brought me and our team in and said, I got a problem here. We're going to try to figure this out, how we can do something that really meets our objectives. We've got to be more competitive. Well, I didn't at that time, Larry, have the leaders change agenda concept. So instead of that, we did something similar, which today I would have called the leaders change agenda. We put together the story that was going to tell what it is we're going to try to do. And each word of the title of the story was important. We decided we were going to be building a new competitive enterprise. Building. That means you're going to be changing. New. Not A, not B, but something new. And competitive. That's why we did this, to be more competitive. So the first idea was to put this story together and to bring, as you said, points 1 and 2, steps 1 and 2 on board. And we got the group of the leadership team on board. They'd liked the idea. And now we got to figure out, outside of a great title, what the hell is it? We need to figure out what this idea was going to become, what the leader change agenda is going to do. So what we did is we formed a team. My team from the outside, a team of about a dozen people from the inside, and we did 2 tasks. One task, we went out and we figured out what's going on in the world competitively, with customers, with our people. We tried to bring all that information into the larger group, ourselves and the dozen, to sort it out. Later, using the concepts that we've developed here at Sage, we would call that first group lookouts. Lookouts go and find the information. They bring it back to this group called the scouts, which are the ones who sort it out and make sense of it. And we did. And at the end, we came up with 5 things that were important. And that was great. And we took it out, steps 3, into the organization, got people on board. People loved it, and away they were going. I thought, well, that's it. We're done. The CEO said, wait a minute. This is great. Enthusiasm is wonderful, but how do I know it's going forward? It takes a while to get the financial data back and all that sort of thing. I want to know before that. So he had us go out and talk to folks and bring back information. And then at the end of the first year, we did a full scale evaluation. And we said to the CEO, there are 5 things, right? 3 of them we're just killing. We're just killing them. 2 need some work. So let's make some adjustments. And we did. We made those adjustments, or he made those adjustments, and things went very well. And then finally, your steps 5 and 6. We found those adjustments, we made those adjustments, and then the final thing is we celebrated. And we had an idea that because change is hard and it's challenging and it makes people uncomfortable, every time something went well, we found a way to celebrate. Our financials were better than we expected, we celebrated. We got a big new customer, we celebrated. And I think those ideas were just great. Now, Larry, if we had had this leaders change agenda, this full process, the 4 steps that we've all put together here at Sage Partners, my life would have been a hell of a lot easier than it was. But nonetheless, stumbling around, figuring it out, we did the leaders change agenda, we did the readiness, we did the whole piece as it were. I would rather have had the whole process, and that's why it is we're putting this together for our audience. The process makes the whole thing easier, but ain't never easy. Larry, a couple of final thoughts from you.
Well, thank you, Tom. I think the final point that I'd like to make is that one of the things that we find when it comes to aligning the organization with new direction and changing directions is that it's very tempting to focus on people and structure, people and lines and boxes, and there's a good reason for that. These are easiest, but usually this is not where the greatest leverage is in our experience. It's the process and culture, which Young really didn't address until they learned some lessons and revisited their process. But process and culture are the levers that usually have the larger impact. These are also the elements of an organization that require the most finesse and expertise to manage. So change is not necessarily comes easy. It needs to be managed. And change is, as you pointed out, Tom, is going to be a way of life for all of our organizations on into the future.
Yeah, there's no question, and not easy. It is hard. Who wants to change? It causes us to do different things. The world out there that is unfamiliar to me is uncertain, and it creates stress. It creates anxiousness. So there's no question, and that's why it is we've worked hard to put together these 4 steps in the overall playbook. Thank you, Larry, for sharing this concept of the Leaders Change Agenda. Next up is John Hanson, where we're going to talk about phase 2 of our playbook to help you navigate the fog of change. In this case, we're going to talk about how you build an organization that is ready and able to make change. So as we go forward, we'll be fleshing out in these series of episodes deep dives into the 4 initiatives that we think are important in creating a playbook to navigate the fog of change. With Larry, we just did Leaders Change Agenda. With John, it's about readiness and making the case for change. I'll come back and talk about the concepts of how you get information into the organization, that's scouts and lookouts. And then with Bob Kippers, we'll talk about the role the board can play and underutilized assets in helping you find your way, helping you navigate the fog of change. Because in all of this, we have to understand it is difficult to manage holding the core and still making these investments in growth in spite of the uncertainty. But it's important. Leaders have a task of balancing these 2. It's a tough job, but that's what leaders do. And in our process, in our playbook, we're going to help you navigate the fog of change and be the leader that makes it through. Thank you for listening. Take care and be well. Change has never come faster or hit us harder. In the fog, leadership is the light that cuts through. I'm Tom Doorley. Thanks for joining me on our Focus on Growth, Navigating the Fog of Change series. Until the next time, keep leading forward.